And welcome to another edition of the Batchelor News Radio Show on the Batchelor News Radio Network, WCOM in Carborough, North Carolina, IBM TV, and Big Mind Entertainment, where you can see the broadcast as well. I'm LA Batchelor. We thank you for joining us wherever you are listening. We certainly appreciate you checking in.
Definitely appreciate folks checking in, like LA Bachelor was saying, and definitely I'm sure he's going to join in with the rest of the comments and everything that he was bringing up. But I know
Yes,
LA's
sir.
following the sports world. I've been following the sports world as well to some degree and everything.
Yes,
I
sir.
did see recently that Simone Biles had said that she wished that she had not gone through all of that Olympic hassle and that she really should have left the game a long time before she did. She actually said that I think a few days ago in a couple of articles where she was feeling, definitely pressured to go into the Olympics and also feeling like that she was one of those early victims of the gentleman that we know did a lot of abuse of those gymnasts and is now serving prison time. But definitely it does sound like she was feeling pressured and feeling like she should have not been involved in the Olympics this year. So that's one of the things that I saw as recently as maybe 2 or 3 days ago. And I know that there's news around vaccinations and, of course, even around NBA trades and things along those lines. But just wondering what your thoughts are whether you had even seen that article where she had said that whole concept that she was maybe being regretful of trying to go into the Olympics because she had still not handled some of the stress and some of the situations that she had been dealing with.
So your mic is coming in really bad, so I didn't hear much you said other than Simone bias and yeah, the only thing I would say in regards to that is that is real. I think that from an athletic standpoint, there are a lot of uh, famous athletes out there that are taking it seriously. LeBron James being one, getting his vaccination. Um, but I just think that people aren't taking it serious enough, and sports world is no different. When you look at the NBA, which starts the season in the next couple of weeks, you have some major basketball players that are
Yep.
saying they're not getting vaccinated. And Mark, we talked about this before. Um, Number one, if that's your personal choice, that's fine. But keep your behind home, and that's any workplace, whether it be the NBA or you and I or anybody else at the hospital or Wendy's. If you don't feel like you want to get vaccinated, you don't feel that you feel it's a hoax and the government that this and the government that, and they're trying to spy on you, that's fine. But I applaud these companies as saying, if you won't do what we want you to do, which is protect yourself, your family, and your fellow man and woman, then you need to do something else. Because as I mentioned, people talk about freedom of speech. Well, you can't go into a movie theater and yell fire. There's consequences to that. So you could have freedom of speech all you want, just like you have a freedom not to take the vaccination. But you also have to have personal responsibility in regards to I'm not going to get vaccinated. However, if my employer, unless you own your own business and you're rich or whatever, or you live in outer space, if my employer says you have to do this or else, then you know what out. You're stuck. And so you're either going to do it or get another form of employment or whatever. Let me just also say this. If you have kids, or I would say you have been a kid and you could do the research, you have to get vaccinated. If you can't go to school, public or private, without getting some form of shots to make sure you don't infect some other child. So parents and people who've been vaccinated should understand that. Thirdly, if you've gotten a flu shot in the past,
Mhm.
then you understand that the flu shot is just that. It's a flu shot. Doesn't mean that you won't get the flu. It means you can combat the flu, just like the vaccination for COVID-19. So this notion of COVID-19 is going to have this miraculous effect on you and you won't be infected is part of the fake news out there that's going on. So the bottom line for me, Mark, is a couple of things. Number one, people are either ignorant to the fact that they are too lazy, and Americans are very lazy in terms of getting the information. And then number two, they're very arrogant. We only make up a portion of not only vaccinations but infections. But yet we are the only country, for the most part, not saying other countries, but for the most part, have this conspiracy theory on everything that's going on. And it's a sense of arrogance. You're not going to tell me what to do. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And it's across the board. It's not a white thing. It's not a black thing. It's not a anything. It's a American thing. And
I hear you, and definitely you're bringing up some good points and everything. Hopefully, I know you're still in the process of traveling back and forth and everything, but definitely we've got our other guest here with us as well, Mr. A.D. Drew. So he's here in the house. You heard LA talking a lot about this vaccination, and we know it's been impacting even the athletes as well, because as he said, there are some athletes that opted not to get the vaccine. I was actually earlier today talking to a friend of mine in California who's not in the athletic realm, but they were frustrated because they are in state government, and I think today is the deadline for state government there in California, that if they are not vaccinated, and this person, for various reasons, including having lost a member after vaccination, is not as much pro-vaccination as some of the other members are. So they're actually in the process of writing people and trying to find out what they can do in order to maintain what they feel is their rights not to be vaccinated, and then still at the same time comply with California rules and things along that line, or comply with them in the sense of also protesting. But I'm just wondering, AD, what are you hearing about vaccinations, even from the sports standpoint? Because I know you're very much of a sports person. LA had told me that about you, and I had heard of some athletes that were also running across the fact that they could not necessarily be working their job in the NFL and some other places because of the vaccination, and they opted not to get that vaccination, and that is their right, but it is also is impacting their paychecks. I think that I've heard there's a couple of them that are losing significantly amounts of money, probably as much as some of us we might be making in a year and everything, because they're getting paid those nice little athletic salaries and all of that. So what are you hearing in that regards, and what are some of the things that you're reflecting on, even in of your own thoughts about this?
Well, let's start off with Cam Newton, who's
Right.
unemployed right now, and one of the main reasons he's unemployed is because he violated the COVID policy of the NFL, which allowed Mac Jones to take his job, and no one has picked him up, not because he doesn't have the talent. Miami needs a quarterback right now. Washington could use another quarterback, but he's not vaccinated. And when my livelihood as a coach depends on these players, and you can't do something that simple to control you can't control injuries, you can't control some of those things, but that's a controllable that you have. That's one of the few controllables that you have in athletics. So you can't do that. Most coaches feel like they don't need you. There's already enough pressure when you coach a high school sport, when 14 to 18-year-olds determine your paycheck. When you coach collegiate sports, when 18 to 22-year-olds determine your paycheck. And we all know how dumb we were at 14 to 18 and 18 to 22. So, but you're a grown man. I understand your personal choice, but you didn't cost yourself money. Look at the NBA.
Right.
Look at the Golden State Warriors in San Francisco. You have to be vaccinated in order to enter that arena.
Yes.
What does that mean? There are a couple of players who cannot, let alone practice or participate in home games the way the policy is written locally. Same thing with the Brooklyn Nets. So are they gonna give up 41 paychecks a year? Or are they gonna go take their shot?
Well,
That's on them and their family.
right.
I know me. I I I, I couldn't afford to give up 41 paychecks a year. I can't afford to give up one paycheck a year.
I hear
Yeah.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
consider
and
consider my livelihood and drop it down to the collegiate level and athletics. When you talk about collegiate, a lot of
yeah,
conferences they aren't mandating it, but they're making the obstacles so hard for the athletes where if they don't have the shots, it's just easy to go ahead and get the shot.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
SIAC still is the only conference that has made it 100% mandate that if you don't play, you don't you don't participate. And I do know a couple of SIAC athletes personally who will not be playing this year because they made that decision not to get the shot, and it's
And
Hey,
unfortunate.
hey, LA, I'm here to
AD,
turn it back over to you because I know you're in a transition and this is your show, so I'm here to turn it back to you. But one thing that I'm going to ask, and I'd love for you and AD possibly to bring up these three things that I'm curious about and everything just to get y'all's response, and you can either bring them in or you can think about them later on in the course of the conversation. Is one, I read an article recently about Mr. Moten, the coach of Central, and of course, people love his coaching style. So I've always been afraid that at some point somebody's going to grab him because he is a great coach at a small market. So I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts about whether Mr. Moten will ever leave North Carolina Central University or whether that will not happen. I know that I brought up to LA a couple of times being a 76ers fan because of my affinity and connection with Doc Rivers. So I'm curious to hear what y'all got to say about Ben Simmons. And then lastly, but not leastly, there was a Senegalese soccer player that was, speaking of athletes and everything, was deciding to if he didn't need but so many Ferraris or so many of those jets and everything else, he'd rather do as LeBron James has done, give that money to building schools and other things in his home country. And a lot of people were even admiring him because apparently he was traveling around in an international airport with a cracked iPhone. And it's the fact that my Android is cracked. I can't really talk about people having cracked phones and everything, but they were really impressed with the fact that they caught this basically millionaire, if not billionaire, traveling around with a cracked phone. And so they made that comment to him about why he had the cracked phone and also, the fact that he wasn't going like some other athletes and buying all these lavish gifts. And he was like, look, I can only drive but one thing at a time. Even if I give them to other family members, we can only live in so many places and everything. So I'd rather do good causes with the money that I'm making. So I'm going to pop off, let you in LA take it from here. If LA calls me back or if there's glitches, I'll pop back on. But I'm going to leave y'all to those thoughts and also maybe y'all have some comments on them. And I'm going to bounce off and turn it over to you, LA.
and AD, it's good questions, especially when you think about a Coach Moulton. We'll get back to football, but it really fits into the conversation we've had about the talent, not just the splash guys like Prime and Eddie George, but talent. And Coach as Central has been beating Duke and making it to the NCAA's a lot. And I think it's really curious to a guy like him if you think he'll stay around. But more importantly, on the basketball side, we've been talking a lot about football. But what about on the basketball side in terms of Reggie Theus, of course, is in the HBCUs now, leading the way. So on the basketball side, do you see your answer on your response to what we have going on in football and in terms of guys maybe coming in, leaving their print, hopefully, prayerfully bringing in those recruits and then moving forward on the basketball side?
Unfortunately, when let's start off with Lavelle Bolton. Lavelle Bolton obviously is a good coach, has a lot of talent, has shown he's a proven winner and can build a program. And yes, how much longer can Central keep him? Here's the problem. Most people are going to want Lavelle Moulton if he goes to a Power Five or what they call a Big Six school in basketball and goes to one of those schools. They're going to want him to go there as an assistant coach.
Or
How many
and
people do you
recruit
know are
probably.
go? Say that again. I lost you there for a second.
And probably be like the head recruiter or something along those lines.
Yeah, yeah. They're gonna ask him to be. He may even come in as first or second assistant. But how many people do you know are going to give up their control of running their own program to go be the number two, number three, or also ran at another university? Yeah, you gotta make a little bit more money, and if money is your motivating factor, by all means, please go do it, Coach Bolton. I'll tell you that in a heartbeat. I'll never talk about another man and their money. But if you're really looking for that control and everything else to establish yourself, it may take him another 5 to 10 years before he gets to be the head coach at one of those schools. He's already a Division I basketball coach. We're not talking about a Division II basketball coach going up to Division I. Could he go to a mid major? Could he go to a Patriot League or a one of those second tier leagues? Yeah, yes, he could. But would he have possibly have better facilities? And you have to excuse me if you hear that train because I am outside. So
That's okay. Hey, you got a nice
that.
background, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah, yeah. But if he possibly would have better facilities, but would he necessarily have better talent? I go into
Right.
one of those second level schools. Now, obviously, if he goes to a Duke or a Wake Forest or a North Carolina, yeah, he has the potential to get in better talent. But then again, he's going to have to deal with something that he doesn't have to deal with at the HBCU necessarily, is the one and done mentality. I'm just coming here to get my 1 year so I can go to the league. And
Right.
we all know that about 70% of those one and dones are literally done after that one, if you understand what I'm saying by that.
That's right.
So, hopefully, Coach Bolton does get the opportunity. It should at least be offered to him. And some of those other institutions may have offered it, but I doubt at this point he's gotten a offer from a Wake Forest or a where we know he didn't get an offer from Duke, even though a couple people tried to talk him up for the Duke job. But he's earned enough credit, respect, and cachet in HBCU sports as a coach where that decision should be his to say no.
Yeah, I think he's earned. You're right. I think he's earned enough wins, certainly, to be in that category where he gets to choose where he wants to go. If he's going to go up, my concern is
Yeah.
if it would be a lateral move. We've seen institutions, the controversy of A&T and Hampton and some others going to PWIs, if you will, and if that's a step up or a lateral move. Same thing with coaches. So that my concern. One other thing I did get before we get back to football, I did get a comment from someone via text that said, that the black market in terms of black coaches are moving forward, but HBCUs are not acknowledging, and this is interesting, acknowledging their programs moving forward as HBCUs. And it's a great comment, AD, because I did have a coach on, I won't say his name, that's, I talked about, looking at Prime and Eddie George and some of these other people coming in and becoming these coaches, making these splash moments, hopefully recruiting and bringing the best back to our programs. And he said, well, it's not about HBCUs. It's about these coaches going out there recruiting. But I have a problem with that statement. Like, it is about HBCUs. If we're about HBCUs and promoting not just the athletic side, AD, but the student side, bringing the best of the best back home, knowing the programs, where you went to FAM. I mean, all these great programs out there where you can get a higher education and move forward. It is about HBCUs. So I don't know where that came from. I went back and listened to it. Somebody heard it, and it was very concerning to me. So what say you about that? I mean, it is about uplifting and bringing forth the best of the best, not just on the field, but in terms of doctors and engineers and everything else at HBCUs.
Are you still there? I lost you for a second.
Yeah, I was just leaving it back to you, sir.
All right. And you kind of choppy. I don't know if it's because of my location, but
Right.
I think you were kind of asking me what's my opinion about these high profile coaches coming down and what they can offer some of our HBCUs and whether they can stay. Is that the gist of the question?
Right. Just this coach said it's not about the splash for HBCUs, it's about African Americans, I guess, assuming coming into these institutions and coaching. But it, of course, it is about HBCUs. Prime didn't go to Florida State. Prime went to Jackson State. So, of course, it's about HBCUs. It's not about the ACC or any other PWIs. Certainly, it's about HBCUs. And can you hear me? Just
I
want to
think
make sure.
I think AD is trying to make some adjustments and everything. So while he's doing
Okay.
that, while he's
My
adjusting
connection.
and trying to get things adjusted on his side.
Okay.
One of the things that I had raised up, and I'm going to see what goes on with that. And I was just curious. Maybe we'll hear from you while we're waiting for AD to hopefully come back and everything. Was you do know that we have somebody that might be available for a job. So I'm thinking that either you or AD have a new job that is available for you, because you do know that at the end of this, I believe, academic year, that school that we were talking about, North Carolina Central University, has recently lost their longtime female athletic director. So it was a young lady that was the athletic director for about 13 years, Ingrid Wicker McCree. So I think that there's a job for you, LA. You can now become the athletic director at North Carolina Central University, because she has said that she's going to step down at the conclusion of the spring 2022 season so that she can pursue the next chapters in her personal and professional career. So she was commended for all the work that she did, including bringing the school from Division Two to Division One, because she was instrumental in that transition. But now she's moving on, and they're going to need somebody else. So I'm going to see if AD has popped back in. But I think the job is available for both of y'all. And actually, I see AD has got to a new location. So AD, I'm offering you the job of Central Athletic Director. Are you ready to take that job? Because Ingrid has also said that she's stepping down in spring. So there's a job for you in Durham, North Carolina, as the athletic director of North Carolina Central University. I don't have the capacity to actually hire you, but if I did, I would. So I'm offering both of you the job. So while he's getting adjusted, LA, are you ready for the job?
Well, I certainly wouldn't. They don't want me in politics or any kind of bureaucratic positions. I talk too much. My opinion is they don't want me. So, but the bigger issue is that as we try to get AD back on the line, it's refreshing to see a lot of people, women of color that are or African American that are in positions. You look at Duke; they have a AD now that's a black woman who's the athletic director, and she went out and hired a former Tennessee player, which was sort of the enemy of Duke and some other schools, and Kara Lawson, and bringing in some talent there. So I really think that it's probably hopefully a trend that you see black women that are taking these positions and having an opportunity to be athletic directors. We see what's going on in the NFL and the NBA in terms of officials and referees, but those are small potatoes. No disrespect to those people in those positions, but as we black men want positions of authority, we want to certainly have our our sisters and women of color in authority. And AD, I don't know if you can hear me at all, sir. I know you're moving around a little bit.
He's moving around trying to get adjusted, so we're gonna see if
He's
we
trying to
can't get
get it
adjusted.
adjusted. But
Yeah,
I
trying to
think,
get.
Mark, I think that first again, he I would never be a candidate for anything like that. But I look and applaud Duke, which is hard for me to do, and that's a whole nother conversation.
I
And
know that's hard for you to do. I can already see that you are having a hard time. It's like I'm seeing you grimace as you're doing it and everything. So I
yeah,
know about how that rivalry can be. It'd be like me saying something good about Notre Dame. So Marquette and Notre Dame historically we've had that battle as well. So it would be like me saying something good about them, or for that matter, DePaul. So I can relate to
absolutely,
what you're saying and everything.
yeah, and I'm a UConn guy, so anyway, I won't get into all that, but yeah, I mean, I'm glad for what and happy and impressed at what and applauding what Duke has done and bringing in his sister to take over, and she brings in Kara Lawson. I think that their women's basketball program is going to be excellent under Coach Lawson. We'll actually have her on in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, cool.
And when you look at other spots, like you said at Central, maybe they even replace. And here's the other thing too, Mark. We have at the HBCU level, not just Central, but other places where there not only are some qualified women of color that can run these programs, and B, they're not, and they should be. And I know a lot of them. I know some have started as sports information directors, which is, if you're covering sports and SIDs, we call them, are they're not the bottom of the totem pole. They're not interns, but they do a lot of work. And I've seen women, some, move up, not enough, move up to where they're taking over programs as athletic directors and prayerfully presidents and chancellors and things of that nature. So there's some opportunity there.
Yeah, no doubt about that. One of the things I was going to ask you really quickly, and I alluded to it when AD was here, and hopefully he's going to be coming back. I'm still waiting to see whether he can find that sweet spot in his wherever he's at, that he can come on board and everything. But I did allude to the fact that apparently Ben Simmons is nowhere to be found in the training camp. So is that going to stay the case, or is he's really going to be just gone, and we'll just not have, we're going to end the Simmons Embiid era, and they'll find somebody else. I know there was a time they wanted Harden, but I'm not even thinking that Embiid and Harden would be a great match as well. And of course, that means that you got to put up some money that they may not have. So I just wondering, what are your thoughts? You are a 76ers fan, and not just when they have Doc Rivers as a coach, but a longtime fan and everything. So I was wondering, what are your thoughts as to whether this is going to be a good move, and will he ever suit up in Philadelphia, or do you expect to see him in Charlotte at some point or another?
Well, I don't think that he should be suiting up. So there are a lot of players that are really talented, and in some cases have great careers, and then they go to markets where they don't excel. Roger Clemens with the Yankees, and I could think of some others. Ben Simmons is certainly one of those guys. I don't dislike Ben Simmons. I do question his work ethic. But Ben Simmons needs a new environment. He knows that. He asked for a trade. The Sixers are going to trade him. He will not play for the Sixers next year. He won't. In the next 3 weeks, he'll be gone, or by the start of training camp or before the season, he will be gone. Where he goes, I don't know. He could come to Charlotte. That might be interesting. But like I said, there's certain guys that can handle Philly fans, or New York or Chicago, and some of the bigger markets, LA, where they go in and they just thrive. Ben Simmons needs a new change of scenery, a new address to be better. He's not going to get it in Philly, and I don't think we will see him back in Philly at all.
And apparently AD is back. AD, do you agree with that? Do you think that Ben Simmons is out the door? He's not going to be suiting up for Philly anytime soon, and he's just going to be playing maybe for Charlotte.
We're still working
Can
on.
you can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you.
All right. Apologize about that. I had to reboot my phone. You know how they go, man.
That's right. That's right. I don't know if you heard. We were kind of shooting a breeze in terms of sports across the board, in terms of the NBA, and we did mention Ben Simmons in Philly. If you thought Ben Simmons will be back, we'll get to the top 10 real quick. But Ben Simmons, certain players. I was telling Mark 80 that certain players, as great as they can be, um, you know play well in big markets. Certain some of them don't. I think Ben Simmons needs a smaller market or at least a change of scenery. Um, so, what do you think should happen with Ben Simmons? Will he play with the Sixers again, and or where do you think he's going?
Seems like we're still having those technical difficulties with him and everything. I don't know where he's at. You'll have to tell me that at some other point. But we're gonna make this thing work one way or the other because that's the way we do things here at the
That's
LA
what we do.
Bachelor show and everything. That I was just curious your thoughts as we were waiting to see whether we're able to ever get Mr. Drew back on. In the middle of a pandemic, we had some football teams that actually, well, maybe not quite in the middle, but it was around the time of the pandemic, were building large stadiums. And you had actually talked about how people have to be vaccinated or not vaccinated or show proof of mask and different other ways that they were dealing with the pandemic and everything. But I was just wondering because there's even talk of a need for I want to say practice facility in South Carolina that would be affiliated with our football team here in this area and everything. But as I was told recently, they haven't even broke ground for that, even though they've been talking about that for several years. But we do know that the Chargers moved because they are now the LA Chargers, and we know that Oakland moved because they are now the Las Vegas Raiders. So in the course of these last several years, there have been some major stadiums built. So I was just wondering your thoughts of these new stadiums popping up and the cost factor, because these stadiums are not cheap to build. And I know there's even a push to build a stadium here for the soccer franchise that they want to bring here, which would be a professional soccer franchise if we ever get it. Because right now we have hockey with the Carolina Hurricanes. We've got basketball and we've got football, but there has been a push to get soccer, and I know that there's been a push to try to get money behind that so that can happen. So I was just wondering your thoughts about the money needed to even build these stadiums and whether we need to be concentrated on that when so many of us are having a hard enough time balancing our own budgets.
Well, I think I mean, really, it's one of those things where you hit it on the head, Mark. I mean, finances, economics, and a stadium. I'll give you a true example. Being from Connecticut, we had a situation where New England, the Patriots are in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Massachusetts geographically is the north of Connecticut, where I'm from. So the south of Connecticut are Giants and Jets fans, the northern part of Massachusetts. So obviously they were struggling before Kraft macaroni and cheese man and Bill Belichick and Tom Terrific were there. They were really god awful. I mean, horrible. But they, it's the NFL, so they made money. And the previous owner was talking about, hey, we're not doing so well. We're looking to move. Connecticut stepped up. So it was this rendezvous and this, courting between Connecticut and the Patriots. End of the day, the Patriots stayed in Foxborough. Connecticut didn't get anything in terms of football. But the bottom line is what that owner was trying to do is leverage Massachusetts to pay for his stadium, at least the bulk of it. Come to 2021, you have a Jerry Jones who doesn't really need to do anything with the Dallas Cowboys. He has college football, boxing, hockey, everything in Texas Stadium. I forget what it's called, the stadium there in Dallas, the new stadium. Fort Worth pays for a bulk of that.
Mm.
And so at the end of the day, these owners are threatening and doing these things. They're already zillionaires. And then they have these stadiums, and you have people who want football, whether it be the mayor or the governor or whatever, or both, and fans that want football in their town, in their city, in their state, so they fund it. So my point bringing that up is that these cities have to be careful and concerned at the same time of what they're going to do in terms of funding these stadiums, whether it be the Patriots, whether it be whomever. The worst team in football, Mark, makes a ton of money.
Mm.
So there's zero incentive for small markets, in a lot of cases, not all, to put a championship product on the field because they're already making money. These are owners making money. I mean, printing money.
Yep.
So there's no incentive to do that. And then the leverage, because the popularity of the game of football is to threaten cities like Foxborough did to Massachusetts, like Jerry Jones did in Fort Worth, and so on and so forth. I'm going to take my team and go somewhere else. You mentioned the Chargers.
Right.
Unless you help me fund this stadium. So if the stadium's $1 billion, that city and their taxpayers may pay 3/4 of that.
Yep.
It maybe even more in some cases. And the owner pays a portion, and then they get all the profits. They get most of the profits. So it's a win for the owners. It's a stretch to win for these local municipalities.
No, I agree with you on that. It's definitely a stretch, and sometimes you even wonder why they're doing it at the times that they're doing it, when we might be in the middle of a recession or in the middle of a pandemic or whatever we might be going through. So I do sometimes even wonder the timing of some of these things. But yes, I've even remember some of those midnight moves, like what happened with what was it, the Baltimore team way back in the day when they decided to move at the midnight and not even let folks know what was going on. I thought that was real crass, and there was a couple of other times that happened as well. As we were talking, since this was more of a sports-oriented show, and I hate that Mr. Drew wasn't able to put all his thoughts in there in terms of getting us situated, but hopefully you'll bring him back in the near future. But one thing I was really curious about, and I know we're getting ready to wind down, is there's a sport that used to be very popular. It was very popular. It was incredibly popular. And part of the reason it was popular was because some of the promoters were not exactly, they might have had some gang affiliations, or they might have had some other less than scrupulous methodology and everything. And now it's not as popular. So I was wondering, do we need to bring some of this negative element back into the world of boxing, or can boxing ever get back to its heyday in the kind of like Don King and some of his promoter competitors ways that existed back in the 70s, 80s, and maybe even as late as the 90s and the early 2000s? Or is this a sport that has seen its day and we just need to let it go? So I was just wondering your thoughts as to boxing and whether boxing even needs to be having that kind of resurgence, because I'm thinking that it's really lost its luster.
Well, I mean, I don't think to your question, I don't think boxing will ever get their mojo back with UFC and MMA and everything else. I don't think the boxing will be in a position that they were in the past. Number two, I think that the promotion of the fight and the pay-per-view is way overdone and overpaid. I mean, the NFL is in a position where they're going to out price themselves at some point. People laugh at me, but it's only enough corporate sponsors, and with all the Me Too's and everything else going on, the NFL is going to outprint themselves. Boxing is already there, and if you can't produce, back in our day, you had Roberto Duran and Leonard and Hagler, and you had Holyfield and Tyson and their matchups, and you go back to Ali and Frazier and Foreman and all those guys, Spinks and and even go even further back. Those days are gone. They're not there anymore. There are not enough. It not just because Mark, because boxing's not promoting it right, not because just of the price, and of course because of all these other elements, but it's also because our kids are not wanting to go in the ring and go gold glove. They want to score a touchdown and shoot a 3 pointer. We talked about that with soccer and your nephews and stuff and all that kind of stuff. You know, people want to shoot. These kids want to shoot 3 pointers. Our kids shoot three
Right.
pointers, or they want to score a touchdown. Every now and then you'll get some who want to hit a home run, but after that, it's a crapshoot. And so boxing's not even in that top 3 or 4 or even 5 in terms of sports. So add that into the fact that they don't have, real marquee matchups. They have a zillion weight classes and championships. You could be the IBM TV heavyweight champion of the world and nobody would know it.
Right.
Disrespect. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of factors that go into it as I wind down and get ready to go. A lot of different factors, Mark, that go into it that are very detrimental to the sport of boxing. Like any other sport, you're going to get your purists, baseball, boxing, hockey, soccer, whatever the case. People are going to follow it. It's just like turn on your radio, you're a pair one, you a P1, you're going to stay to that station, but every now and then you might pop another one. It's the same thing with sports. So boxing, I think, is in a lot of trouble for all those variables.
No, I agree. And like I said, I know you got to bounce off, and I've actually got to get ready to end as well to get to Coco's show. But one of the things I was just getting ready to mention is I am glad. I know you told me not to be worried. And yes, the Milwaukee Brewers did go ahead and clinch their division, even though they lost earlier today to St. Louis. They beat them yesterday. So they lost yesterday to them, but they beat them. They lost today, but beat them yesterday. But that being said, they are the division champions, so hopefully they'll do well in the playoffs. I know that the Devil Rays also won as well. But the Durham Bulls are actually the first ever champions of the PDF's AAA East League, and the Durham Bulls won 2 of the remaining games that they were playing in a series with the Charlotte Knights, and that gave them the title that they owned. And as I was talking to a cohort of ours, Mr. Jacoby McDuffie, who does the on-the-field antics for the Bulls, apparently they are the champions because there was no real playoffs because of COVID. So COVID stopped the playoffs, and therefore they won because of basically winning the regular season and like this little extended schedule thing that they did as well that I guess was supposed to substitute for the playoffs. So the Durham Bulls season is done because COVID stopped the playoffs is basically the gist of what I got and everything. So we're even seeing
But you know
the
what?
impact of things going on.
But though, real quick to your point, Mark, it's the pandemic or whatever. You still got to beat who's in front of you. They
Right.
won games,
They
so
did win games.
we can't water down. If they won games, and oh by the way, it's pandemic, and it shuts down the season, they still won games. So
Yeah, they definitely
let's
won
give
games. But
give credit
so
to
they
them.
definitely still won games, and I hear what you're saying, but I just find it funny because even if you look at some of our fellow media outlets, they basically said that that they won what amounted to not just the local championship, but apparently they won the AAA national championship when they beat Charlotte because in the past they would go to like play the team from the Pacific and things of that nature because of the way that it was structured. I guess maybe the way that the other leagues were done as well. They are actually considered the national champions, whereas in the past they would have gone and actually had to compete against the folks from the West Coast and everything. So don't get me wrong, I am glad that we have another national championship here in the Durham area, and you are right, they had to win the games in order to do that, but it is showing the impact of the pandemic on things and everything. And you also have to wonder, will there be that infamous asterisk whenever we get out of the pandemic era, because people will say that they wanted in like if you win in a shortened season, or if you win because of something going on, you get that lovely little asterisk. So that is my concern. But at the end of the day, you are right. They are the champions, and deservedly so. They had a great year and they won the championship. And our shout outs go to the AAA national champions. And this is actually their it looks like their second time, because their Durham's previous 2 league titles came in 2009 and 2017. So they have definitely had a history of doing well, and they are continuing that tradition by winning this national championship in the year of 2021.
Yeah, and kudos to them. Big ups to them. I'm glad that they had the chance to do so. But people make big deals out of things and out of no things. But champions are champions. I mean, unless it was fixed, you're still a champion. So I do appreciate them. But let's run. I just want to remind people if they miss any part of the broadcast, they can um, get it on Big Mind Entertainment. You go to IBM TV if you're interested. Get with Mark Lee. Interested in advertising with us or having your own show? I'm sure Mark can help with that. And don't forget, in about an hour or less than that, we will be on the air again on the Batchelor.airtime.pro, and we will be talking with a few guests. Matter of fact, we'll be talking with Yanni Knox. He's a licensed master of social work. We'll talk about what happens when you love someone who is broken. Jim Williams will talk some politics with us. The deadline in terms of keeping this government going is at midnight. Will they pass something? And of course, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is still on the table. Will they get that done? So make sure you join us at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, and we'll have all that for you on the Batchelor News radio show.
Looking forward to it. Should be a great conversation. Get ready to hit that 30-second spot that we get going in and out. Actually, I'm going to try something new for you, LA. We have a generic spot as well. It's actually some of the sponsors of IBM TV and everything, and it's kind of like a plane that flies away. So usually I do 30 seconds in and 30 seconds out, but since this is actually technically our official out for all the shows, and I see that I'm actually on that banner, we're going to take a plane on out of here. So let's catch the plane and see the pictures of some of the people that are involved in the network on the leadership level. So you might even see a picture of the two founders as well as some of the folks from India that are also part of the team as well. So we're going to take a plane on out of here to end the show.
Thank God. Thank you, Lord. Hi, Belinda.